Kylie here, back for another Friday Live with Kylie. I am so sorry that I'm running a little bit behind in terms of the timing of things. Today has already been a pretty intense day. I've got back-to-back calls, and I really wanted to fit this in as well so that we could maintain our Friday Live ritual. So today I wanted to talk to you guys about sitting and sitting for babies. And this is something that I hear a lot of moms in terms of wondering when sitting is appropriate, when their baby should be sitting up independently. But I also hear a lot of moms doing these weird kinds of things to get their babies to sit. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about what is developmentally appropriate for sitting, what age that happens at, and also really why we don't want to necessarily force sitting before baby is ready. So first of all, I want to start off with saying that the normal range for independent sitting, so baby is able to get into a sitting position on their own. The normal age range for that is anywhere between 7 and 9 months. Sometimes it happens a little bit earlier, but oftentimes it's later than you think. And really, until baby is able to get into a sitting position independently, so on their own, we're not placing them in sitting. They get into that position on their own. Until that happens, baby is actually not developmentally ready to be sitting upright on their own, because getting into that sitting position independently is their first true vertical position. That means that all of their muscles in their core, so in their trunk, both front and back, are now strong enough to support that upright position properly, but also so that their spinal curves are actually properly formed to support that vertical position. So I want to backtrack a little bit now and talk about why the spinal curves are so important for us to think about. So baby is born with a very C-shaped spine. That's because they were literally like all tucked up, curled up in a little ball when they were inside your womb and growing. And you'll even notice for the first like 3-ish months, baby's most favorite position really is in that flexed position, in that curled position, that fetal position, okay? And so we really need to support that curved spine, that C-shaped curve, because baby really is just not ready in terms of their strength of their muscles to be in any other kind of position. So that's why like we're holding babies, we're hugging babies this way, your baby wearing facing in, and they're all nice in that kind of tucked position with the froggy legs and all of that, okay? And so as they start to do so that C-shaped curve for newborns, and then as we start to get older and we start to stand up and walk and all of this, we as adults have an S-shaped curve in our spines. And that S-shaped curve actually is there for a reason, to really help take some of that impact from that vertical impact against gravity. It's able to help our bodies take some of that downward pressure, okay? And so babies have to develop those curves. How do they develop those curves? Well, for the first way that they start to develop that kind of more curve in their neck is actually by doing tummy time, okay? So let me move back here. So let's just say baby is on the floor. Let's just see. Okay, so baby is on the floor here. And you know, they're maybe initially not able to lift their head a lot because their head is really heavy, which we talked about before. And you know, they haven't developed all of the muscles in their neck and the back here. So, but every time they lift their head to turn and switch their position, they're working on all of those muscles. They're working on lengthening and strengthening those muscles. And each time they're strengthening also that curve in the neck. And then they get up into this position, which I call Olympic level tummy time. And that curve is starting to develop even more. And it's being supported by the strength of the muscles that are developing from all of these different, you know, pushing and pulling and reaching. of their lengthening and strengthening of their muscles each time they're moving. Then as baby starts to, they're starting to roll, and then they start to get up into hands and knees, that's when they start to develop the lumbar curve here, okay? And so that is also develops over time and is also supported by the development of all of these muscles in the trunk. So what happens is that babies, we really need them to be having developed those curves, especially the cervical curve and the lumbar curve, and all of the muscles to support those curves, because when they get into sitting, it's usually happening from a hands and knees position, and they actually, like, it's hard to show on, I'll just show it on myself. So you're on the hands and knees position, and they're actually pushing themselves back, or they're lying down sometimes and they push themselves up. But regardlessly, they need to have the support in their spine curves, but also in their muscles in order to support that upright position. Okay, so we can all agree, I'm sure, on the fact that they need to have strong muscles, strong trunk support in order to maintain upright. Now, I want to talk about what happens when we put baby into a position like sitting before they're ready, before they've developed those curves, before they have developed the strength in their core. And so really sitting baby up and propping them with pillows, or even doing that tripod kind of thing that I see parents doing all of the time, where you're putting them into like this tripod kind of position because you have this feeling like you have to teach sitting to your baby. This is actually putting a lot of downward pressure into their spine that is not ready for it yet. It's not ready for that downward pressure. It's not ready to handle that gravity yet in that vertical position. And their muscles are not strong enough to support, which is why when you put baby sitting here, they might be a little bit wobbly. They kind of looks like they're gonna fall over. But it's also why a lot of times what happens is baby will literally just sit there and they're like frozen, because if they move, they're gonna fall over, because they don't actually have the trunk support to maintain that sitting and then start reaching out and, reaching outside of their base of support. Okay, so we want to be careful that we're not forcing baby into these kinds of positions before they're ready. Now, that being said, I totally get that sometimes you're holding baby in your lap and you're playing with them, or maybe you're holding them on the floor. These positions are a little bit better because baby is against you. Their spine is being supported, their trunk is being supported against your body. So if you're in like a baby class, for example, and you're doing different activities, or they're sitting on your lap and you're at the coffee shop or whatever, this is better. It's still not great, but obviously there's going to be times, like if you're having dinner and baby is fussing and you're like, okay, I'm just gonna hold you while I eat my dinner. This is much, much better because their spine curves, their spinal curves, but also their muscles are being supported by your body. But also every time your body is moving, their body is also moving in relation to. And your body is unconsciously moving in relation to their body. So if they're uncomfortable, then you're kind of shifting without even thinking about it. Okay? But putting baby into this kind of position, my baby won't even sit in that position. But this is just really not great for their development. So the same goes for things like Bumbo seats and the Exersaucers. So Bumbo seats basically are terrible. I know it's a big thing on the baby market, but baby is actually, their bum is lower than their hips, and so they're kind of squashed. I'm sure you've seen babies that are just like squashed into the Bumbo and like they can't really move because they're just like stuffed in there. And so that is not actually helping their development at all. It's not allowing them to start using and strengthening those muscles by lengthening and strengthening. And it's not doing anything for their spinal curves. And so really the best place for baby is to be on the floor, to have that freedom of movement, to be exploring their bodies, but also pushing and pulling and reaching their bodies so that they can lengthen and strengthen those muscles, which then can help to strengthen, to develop and strengthen those spinal curves that will eventually support them in that vertical position. So I'm sure you guys probably have lots of questions for me. Now, I do want to say this. If you've been putting your baby into a sitting position, you haven't like ruined your baby, don't worry about it. But now you know better. And now you're going to do better. You're going to make better choices. So having baby on the ground just playing is totally fine. And yes, sometimes babies get frustrated because they're on the ground and they're trying to crawl and they're trying to move and they just can't figure it out. But our job as parents is not to save them. It's to help them, but not necessarily put them into positions they can't get into, because when they are put into positions that they can't get into on their own, they don't know how to get out of them. So essentially they're stuck. So a lot of times what happens is babies that are put into that sitting position early on and they haven't gotten into that position on their own, they don't know how to get out. So they don't actually transition in and out of sitting into crawling, and they end up doing the bum scooting. Okay, and last time or a few times ago, I've talked about the importance of crawling, right? So it all kind of ties together, and we really have to trust our babies, but trust like human evolution too. There's a reason why there are these developmental skills that happen in a certain order, and we don't run a rush development. So the normal age range for sitting is between that 7 to 9-ish month mark. You know, it could be even 10 months. Like, it's not, as long as you're seeing some of those little mini milestones that I've talked about, then you can trust that your baby is developing properly. So we really just want to make sure that we're not forcing them into positions they're not quite ready for, because that's not helping them actually, it's actually hindering their development. But that being said, don't worry if you've already been doing it, just stop. Choose something else now. Allow them to have that floor play time so that they can start to strengthen those proper muscles, so that they can start to, you know, develop their spinal curves a little bit more. All right, so pop your questions under the video and I will do my best to answer them. And that's it for now. Bye, have a wonderful weekend, and I'll talk to you guys soon.